One of the less known types of childhood trauma is pre-birth trauma. Let's take a look. A question we're often asked is, can children experience trauma pre-birth? Well, until a few years ago, there was very little known about the impact of anything that happened to a child pre-birth. However, now we have a lot more information about any adverse childhood experiences that happen before a child is born and how they can impact that child. This is definitely an area where more research is needed to fully explore the impact of anything that happens to a child pre-birth. But we have made progress in leaps and bounds over the last few years, and what we do know is that things that happen pre-birth can impact a child, and we can see the results of that impact post-birth. Before a child is born, they have 9 months of development. During this development time, they will experience similar things to the experiences their mother has. If the mother receives nurture and care, they will receive nurture and care. But if the mother's experiences are reverse, or if she doesn't care for herself in a way that will support her developing baby, the baby will also have adverse experiences. There are a number of things that we know can impact on a developing baby pre-birth. Firstly, nutrition and personal care. Is the mother getting enough of the right foods and nutrition to support herself and the developing baby? If she isn't, this can impact on the baby's growth and development. Does the mother have a good sleep and rest routine that can support the baby's development? We all, adults and children, function well with consistent patterns in our day, times when we know we're going to eat, sleep or be active. These consistent patterns help our bodies regulate. Although more research is needed in this area, it's thought that inconsistent patterns pre-birth could impact on a child forming consistent patterns post-birth. If there's no consistency in rest and nutrition pre-birth, does this mean that a baby will have more difficulty settling post-birth? Good nutrition, rest and routine are some of the core things that we all need, and it makes sense that we need them both pre-birth and post-birth, and if we don't receive them pre-birth, it will have an impact. But what about some of those more adverse things that are more associated with childhood trauma? How do they have an impact? What about drugs and alcohol? It is now well known that any drugs and alcohol consumed by the mother during pregnancy can have an impact on the developing baby. What is becoming more known is that alcohol can have a significant impact. Any amount of alcohol could impact the developing baby. Alcohol in the mother's blood passes to her baby through the placenta. The baby can't process alcohol, which means it can stay in their body for a long time. Alcohol can damage the brain and body and stop the baby from developing as typically expected. Alcohol passing to the baby pre-birth can result in them developing fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. This would most certainly be classed as pre-birth trauma because it impacts on development. Children who have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder can have problems with movement, balance, vision and hearing, learning, such as problems with thinking, concentration and memory, managing emotions and developing social skills, hyperactivity and impulse control, communication, such as problems with speech, the joints, muscles, bones and organs, such as kidneys and the heart. It is now known that alcohol consumed during pregnancy can have an impact on the developing child that is lifelong. The advice during pregnancy is not to consume any alcohol at all to avoid this pre-birth trauma altogether. Another type of pre-birth trauma we're becoming more aware of is the impact of increased stress or cortisol pre-birth. Cortisol is the hormone that's released when the body goes into stress or experiences danger. It's sometimes called the stress hormone, but actually it has lots of different important functions within the body. The body can release cortisol after it releases the fight or flight hormone adrenaline to keep the body on high alert for any new danger. It also triggers the release of glucose for fast energy if you need to flee or take action. Pre-birth, the baby can be impacted by a mother's high cortisol levels, as well as their own levels if there's pre-birth stress. Research is starting to evidence that this can lead to regulation problems and can make the child more sensitive to stress post-birth. Regulation difficulties and an increased sensitivity to stress is something we're regularly supporting children with here at our clinic. It's actually one of the more common difficulties that we see in children who've experienced trauma, and this includes children where we know they've experienced pre-birth trauma, but there's been very little post-birth trauma and they've been in safe and stable environments since birth. So what can cause pre-birth stress? Well, there are a lot of things that can cause a mother pre-birth stress, but something we're becoming more aware of and that it might have a very big impact on children pre-birth is domestic violence. So situations where a mother is really fearful for her safety, really fearful about what is going to happen, this can have a really big impact on the mother and the baby as well. We can envision that in these circumstances the mother will have increased levels of cortisol, but there may also be a stress response from the baby too. They could be responding to the mother's stress and the sounds that they can hear. Babies can start to hear from around 18 weeks of fetal development. They can hear the mother's heartbeat and will hear if it rapidly increases at times of stress. They can also hear loud noises such as those that often occur during domestic violence situations. These noises can also evoke a startle response from the baby. If this regularly happens, this would continually put the baby into a state of stress, meaning their body is more accustomed to going into stress even before they're born. This is another impact on development and would be classed as pre-birth trauma. So the answer to the question, can children experience pre-birth trauma, is most certainly yes, they can experience pre-birth trauma. Of course, there are lots of different types of pre-birth trauma, and you can't predict the severity based on the type of trauma experienced. As with all trauma, it's really individual. But what we do know about pre-birth trauma is that this is a really critical period of development for a child. So things that will have a larger impact are things like alcohol misuse, substance misuse, and domestic violence, where the impact can actually be really huge on the child's development. Finally, I have one trauma-informed care top tip. Pre-birth trauma is something that's still relatively unknown. We receive questions from adoptive parents, foster carers, guardians and teachers on a weekly basis about childhood trauma and if a child could have experienced trauma even if they've been in a safe and stable environment since birth. The knowledge about pre-birth trauma just isn't there currently. But if we can understand pre-birth trauma and that there could be an impact to the children that we're supporting, we're going to be better equipped to provide trauma-informed care and to really support that healing process. So my top tip is to educate others on pre-birth trauma, share this video if that is helpful, and to really spread the word that this is a type of trauma and it could have happened to a child that you're supporting or caring for. And remember to subscribe to Tribe for more videos and for more trauma-informed care in practice.